Hey guys, it is Tristan with Nerdette's NewsStand, and I want to talk a little bit more about Watchmen. I was planning on making this video later this week, but I want to get it. This is a big week for comic books, so I want to get it done before then. But it's not only Watchmen. I did listen to the podcast that Damon Lindeloff does for HBO, and I'm going to get mildly political, so I apologize. He is a lot more progressive and liberal than I am. It doesn't mean I don't want to hear what he has to say, but it doesn't always mean that we even agree barely at all. But I am trying to look at this story, and I've been invested in this for 9 weeks. So looking at it, you have to look at it as a continuation. Some things were changed, and that's okay. We're used to seeing like the button being known for Watchmen, and now they're trying to kind of make that the egg. But when it comes to Damon, I'm glad I waited to listen to this podcast until after. I have a hard time when it comes from separating art from artists. Doesn't mean I won't give credit where it's due. It just doesn't mean I care for you as a person either. So I'm glad I waited. And not only that, but I want to talk about some of the recent comments I've been getting. So if you are new to the channel, don't forget to hit subscribe. As always, if you enjoy this video, hit that like button. Links to support the channel are in the description, but leaving a like, a comment, everything really helps. I appreciate each and every single one of you. So let's talk about the issue that has come up in my comment section over the past 2 weeks when it comes to a female Dr. Manhattan. And I've talked about gender and race swapping characters in the past when it's unneeded. This actually kind of worked. Like, it really did. And not only that, but we've seen Reggie, who was Rorschach in Doomsday Clock. That really did work. So when something's just as good as the original, it's okay. As long as if they do continuation for season 2, and I'll talk about that towards the end of the video, that they don't make her like able to use his powers perfectly, able to do all these things just because, you know, she's a female. So, as far as, let's talk podcast first. And as far as that goes, when they were talking, they said the main theme of this entire series was race. And I completely disagree. Like, my honest question is, in 2019, why do we need to tell a story about race? According to the Southern Law Center, only 1,020 people actually identify as white supremacists in America. Now, of course, those are people that come out and say, you know, I am this kind of person. And when you look at the country of 327 million, that's a very small percentage. So to talk about actually having that be a theme in a show right now is pretty ridiculous. Now, I'm not trying to discount any real racism because it exists, but this is causing division. So I think that the main theme really, what inspired this for him, and I'm going to talk about that here in a minute, is the culture war kind of bleeding into all forms of media right now, whether it shows like this or comic books or even music at this point. It's bled into everything. Politics has, right? So there's a turning point, and it's kind of came now more against white people. Like, I'm not playing victim at all because I really don't care. I just don't think it's needed in 2019 to really, you know, hit white supremacy. It's unneeded. So one of the other thing he talked about was a big theme in this show was representation, right? So he talks about superheroes, they're being primarily white. Mostly superheroes nowadays, in days past, are white. And when they are people of color, they cover themselves up. Like, you know, Hooded Justice had to. And then he goes on to say people like Black Panther and War Machine cover themselves up because they're black. No, that's absolutely ridiculous. Like, we have people that cover themselves up because they are using it as armor. So to say that is kind of, honestly, really silly. But did he forget, Luke Cage, Storm, Nick Fury, Blade, Black Lightning, Jon Stewart, all of those people don't cover themselves up. Like, he kind of needs to open his eyes and quit living in an echo chamber when it comes to this representation thing. Yeah, I get you want to see yourself on screen, but don't act like you don't. A little bit. Another big theme, and we've seen it used over and over again, is this, Tulsa 21 massacre. One of his favorite people was Tasani Coates, as far as him reading the book Between the World and Me and A Case for Reparations. And we're going to get into reparations a little bit, because I'm against it. I never owned a slave. Black people today were never a slave. So I don't feel like anything is due. It's silly to me. And if we go by that logic, you kind of have to include the European Christians, or that were enslaved by the Muslims, or the Americans enslaved by the Algerians. Do you see, like, the slippery slope when you start talking reparations, what begins and who has to be included, who's not, and stuff like that. So there's no need for reparations for crimes not committed by me and not committed upon you. It's silly. It really is silly to me. And not only that, but he talks specifically about the Tulsa massacre. And those people were not slaves. Yes, they were a victim of racial cruelty and horrible crimes and slaughter. Again, if we go by that logic that those people, those relatives need reparations, we also need to say that basically, victims are relatives of people in 9/11 World Trade Center need reparations. Any school shooting, like any major disaster that involves some side of hate crime or some side of terrorism would then be eligible for reparations. Again, like I said, that slippery slope really appears when you start to talk about reparations, and you can make the case that basically everybody could get them at some point if you keep going. So no, I don't agree with them. I've long said that stuff like this, stuff like Black Lives Matter, Me Too, all of these cause a lot more division than good. So to have them as a theme in a show kind of alienates a large sector of your audience that you wish to have. And this show was successful. Let's not sit here and act like it wasn't. But and I personally did like it. So I want to talk a little bit more about Dr. Manhattan. Now, long ago, we know he lost his humanity. So the tachyon particle implant did make a lot of sense for him to have a normal life. But would Manhattan care enough to transfer his power before death? I personally think he would, especially considering who he did transfer to that. So not only that, but the transferation, is that a word? Makes sense. Let's be real. Women are a lot more emotional and therefore less likely in that scenario to lose their humanity. And perhaps even to take it a step further, do more good than Manhattan ever did, because he was a bit lazy with his powers. He could have done a lot more. Not only that, but the woman that he gave it to, Angela, she was the woman he loved. She was a wife, a cop, a hero, a mother. She has a lot of redeeming qualities, and she definitely wasn't one of my favorite characters in the show. Actually, I didn't even like her until we saw the second to last episode. But her character could use that power for good. So I want to talk a little bit. I've gotten some comments about how Rorschach's legacy was and how it was dishonored and stuff like that. So his journal was definitely disrespected. But it was found by radicals. And absolutely, it was just to further this kind of white supremacy plot. And throughout the series, we do see it, respect gained back where it's due. Whether it's the beans, eating of the beans in a can, or Angela breaking fingers like Rorschach style. And above all, the fact that Adrian was brought to justice, which is what Rorschach wanted literally on his deathbed, was enough for me to say, there was enough respect given back to Rorschach. And I will talk about how they can even take that a step further here in a minute. But above all, my biggest takeaway from the series as a whole and the podcast was a theme I touched on yesterday. So the fact that we wear metaphorical masks. Yes, I'm going to go over this a little bit again. I apologize if it's a repetition of information. But metaphorical masks for anger, that hide kind of a deeper pain. Whether it's hurt, sadness, or more. And I'm not saying I'm not guilty of it. I portray myself as a lot stronger than I am because I have a problem being vulnerable. That's my biggest flaw, is I can't be vulnerable to hardly anyone, let alone myself sometimes. It's very hard. I had a recent situation, and I've talked about this a little bit with MGTOW, MGTOW, and it was more on BitChute than YouTube, for sure, but it transferred over to YouTube also. And they realized how to bug me. They really did, whether it was death threats or vulgar comments. They came in, and they came in hard, and they realized how to get under my skin, and it worked. And I kind of personally had to take a step back. I had to give those wounds air, as Will Reeves would say. I had to reevaluate, well, for one, the source, and realize at the end of the day, I like me. Like, I don't have a problem with myself, and if somebody else does, that's their problem. I know not everybody has to like me. That's silly. That's not going to happen. And these people disliking me for very stupid reasons, like being a female and being opinionated. That's dumb. So, you know what? That's their loss. So, I think that was my biggest takeaway as far as this goes, as far as themes go. But, as silly as it sounds, it worked for me. I want to talk second season real quick, and then I'll wrap up. But I think there's potential. I really do. I think we could see Angela with her powers, learning how to use them, learning how to apply them in real politics today, because it's going to be political. Watchmen's political. So not only that, we could see Ozzy in jail, possibly meeting up with Night Owl, getting some Dan in here. That would be amazing. I would really like to see that. I think the best part, though, that we could actually see is if we get Reggie's version. This is what I'm going to talk about, Rorschach's legacy again. Reggie's version of Rorschach to defend, the disrespect done to the Rorschach legacy. We could get him to clear Walter Corvasca's name and clear the idea of this white supremacy front that was kind of put on for the plot point of Lady True. And then we could also get a creation of a vigilante task force, because right now, being a vigilante in the Watchmen universe is still outlawed under Keen. Well, he's dead now, but even so, we could get a vigilante task force instead of an anti-vigilante task force. And there are plenty of other good ideas I've seen you guys give in the comment section. I really think they could make it work if Damon comes back, because I do. As much as we disagree on a lot of points, I do think he did, at the end of the day, a good job with this. I do think as a continuation, 30 years later, this story was done well. And it is, technically canon, right? Like, I don't know how that works, but I do know that Doomsday Clock comes out tomorrow, and I'm so excited. Finally! So let me know what you guys think, whether it's season 2 or the political points of the podcast, or anything you have to say about this series, whether you hated it. Just let me know. I will see you guys in the next one. Bye bye. Hey, I want to give a huge shout out to my Subscribe Star and Patreons. You guys literally make this channel possible. Thank you so much, Sanjuro, Way Else One, BG Torrance, Black Knight Fool, Brucey, Grand Smear, Jeffrey Allen Carnes, Jeremy Burtz, Mike Buckner, Robert, and Timothy French. You guys are freaking amazing. Thank you so much, and make sure you like and subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.